The Global Hawk unmanned aerial vehicles flown by NASA were originally built for the military and used for flight testing at Edwards Air Force Base in California. When the Air Force was done testing these models, they were transferred to NASA, which turned the planes into airborne laboratories to study the Earth. NASA flew its first science mission with the Global Hawk in 2010.
The Global Hawks are really a new aircraft for doing hurricane studies. Manned aircraft typically fly for, say, 8 to 10 hours when they do a research flight. Of that 8 to 10 hours, you may have 4 hours or more just getting to and from the storm, so that in a typical flight, you only get 4 to 6 hours actually sampling within the storm. With the Global Hawk, we can get 3 times, sometimes even 4 times as much as you can get with manned aircraft.
Now, this plane can fly to 65,000 feet. It can fly 13 miles up. It can also fly for nearly 30 hours. So this plane can take off here from Virginia, on the coastline of Virginia, close to where hurricanes form. It can fly all the way to Africa. It can spend about 10 hours on the coastline of Africa and then fly all the way back. There is no plane that can do that in the NASA vehicles that we have.
Because the Global Hawk can fly so high for so long, scientists can study larger areas of the Earth for longer periods of time, in places where planes with pilots on board may not be able to reach. We spoke with pilot Phil Hall about the Global Hawk and what it's like to fly the plane without actually being inside it.
So the two Global Hawks that we're flying for HS3, Air Vehicle 6 and Air Vehicle 1, from a pilot perspective, it's a very different aircraft. We don't have any rudder pedals or a control yoke. We actually use a mouse and keyboard. We actually have a control room on the ground. We have 2 of them now. We have one at Edwards Air Force Base in California, and we have one here at Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. So it's basically like a trailer. It's been specially designed for Global Hawk. It's full of computer systems that can talk to the aircraft. So we can connect to the internet, and all these satellite products of Lightning, the storm from satellite images, we're able to download that almost real time and use that to actually navigate the storm. For the first part of the mission, we actually fly the aircraft from Wallops. And once we get about 2 or 3 hours into our flight, we actually transfer control of the airplane back to Edwards Air Force Base, NASA Dryden Flight Research Center. It's very different from any other kind of aviation operation in that we have pilots on both coasts, and we can actually transfer control of the aircraft during the flight to the other pilots. And when you have these long missions, like 26 or 27 hours, one person can't sit there for the entire flight. So we actually have 3 or 4 shifts of people that come and go to man this aircraft.
Now, pilots know how to fly planes and they can tell the plane where to go, but how does a pilot actually know where to go? You have to have scientific information. Now, the scientists sit in a separate trailer. We have computers sitting in front of us. We bring in satellite information. We bring in forecast information. And because weather can change so fast, they can collect that information, interpret it, and then relay it to the pilots and say, well, instead of going over to this point, why don't you go over to this point over here, which is where we think the eye has relocated. So it's a great team between the scientists and the pilots to actually get the most information you can out of a flight.
How can you become involved in our mission? You can follow the plane too, just like the pilots and scientists do, by participating in live chats, where you can get live updates on where the plane is flying right from your own classroom.
You can definitely be a part of our mission by actually being able to look at the same screen we're looking at. I'm looking at where the plane is flying with respect to the storm, and you have access to the same data I get to look at. You have access to see the plane's altitude, you can see the wind speeds, you can see the wind direction, and you can chat live with pilots, with forecasters, mission scientists, and we're looking at the same thing you are, and that's just really exciting to know that you can ask us any question at any time, and we are right there looking at the same thing.
To learn more about our mission, visit nasa.gov/HS3. See you next time on NASA Airborne.
Astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and then finally Mike Collins now boarding the transfer van for the trip to the launch pad.
Flashing their cameras as the crew comes out.
This is a very historical walkway. It's the same path that the Apollo astronauts took to go to the moon.
The flying crew now departing from their crew quarters here at the Kennedy Space Center.
It's a bittersweet privilege to be taking Endeavour on its last flight, delivering the last major piece to the ISS.
I was there before they put the wings on it. It was almost like it was my baby.
That space station assembly mission was perfect from start to finish, and a lot of that was Endeavour. It just, phenomenal vehicle.
The Eagle represents, the United States of America. It's something we're proud of. That's our bird. That's the Eagle.
After nearly 2 decades of achievements in space, Endeavour makes one last reach for the stars on its 25th and final mission. Endeavour is traveling to the International Space Station with 6 veteran space flyers, Commander Mark Kelly, pilot Greg H. Johnson, and mission specialists Mike Fink, Drew Feustel, Greg Chamatoff, and Roberto Vittori from Italy, representing the European Space Agency.
Well, I'm the commander of STS-134. We've got a whole list of mission objectives, probably 30 things on the list. But the big objectives is to get the alpha magnetic spectrometer installed on the outside of the space station.
The 15,000-pound AMS is a massive particle physics detector that will attach to the International Space Station. Its job? To search through cosmic rays, looking for proof of dark matter and antimatter.
In my mind, this is like the Hubble Space Telescope. I mean, it has the same type of potential for revolutionizing our understanding of the universe.
They're also delivering critical spare parts to help keep the station up and running for years to come, along with the shuttle's orbiter boom sensor system. Feustel, Fink, and Chamatoff will rotate through 4 spacewalks, the last performed by shuttle crew members for the remainder of the Space Shuttle program. And when Endeavour makes its final touchdown on the runway, it will end a storied flying career for the youngest of NASA's shuttle orbiters. Even Endeavour's beginnings were unique. It was built as a replacement for Space Shuttle Challenger, and named for the first ship commanded by explorer James Cook. At the time of the Challenger accident, astronaut Barbara Morgan was part of the Teacher in Space program, serving as backup to teacher Krista McAuliffe, who launched aboard Challenger on that fateful day in 1986.
I think Endeavour in particular, because she was named by school children all over the country, that really shows a carrying on and a moving forward, and how open-ended and never-ending that future can be.
Like all shuttle orbiters before it, Endeavour was built by Rockwell in Palmdale, California. That's where astronaut Bruce Melnick's bond with Endeavour began.
My first job as an astronaut, even before I was a qualified astronaut, was to represent the astronaut office out in Palmdale, where Endeavour was being built. So I got to see her being built from scratch to finish, got to see the wings put on, and it's amazing.
The nation's brand new space shuttle was delivered to Kennedy Space Center on May 7, 1991, exactly 1 year before its maiden flight.
It was great to see Endeavour come in. We knew why it was coming, because it was replacing Challenger. So it was going to be the new fleet leader and the new kid on the block.
Melnick was on Endeavour's first flight, STS-49. The 7-person crew faced an ambitious 8-day mission to repair the stranded Intelsat 6 satellite.
I'll never forget when Dan Brandenstein, who was the chief astronaut at the time, asked me if I wanted to be on the first flight of Endeavour. I mean, you could hear me hooting and hollering, because that was going to be the premier mission at the time.
Endeavour made history again during the last shuttle mission of 1993, when 7 astronauts upgraded the Hubble Space Telescope and improved its vision. It was an extremely complex flight, involving 5 back-to-back spacewalks. And in the end, all the hard work paid off. The telescope's new second-generation wide-field and planetary camera beamed back grand images taken with dazzling clarity. And Endeavour helped to carry the load in the construction of the International Space Station, including the very first shuttle flight to the fledgling outpost, STS-88. Endeavour delivered the American Unity module, and astronauts connected it to the Russian Zarya module already in place, and the station was born. Kennedy Space Center Director Bob Cabana commanded that cornerstone flight.
I have to admit, because I got to command Endeavour on that first space station assembly mission, I'm a little partial to Endeavour.
Now, less than 3 years later, the nation was stunned by the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. On December 5th, all eyes turned to Kennedy Space Center, where Endeavour waited to make the first flight after the tragedy.
Mike, first, we'd like to say thank you to the entire KSC team for getting Endeavour in great shape. And secondly, from the entire crew, we're all well aware that for over 200 years, and certainly over the last 2 months, freedom rings loud and clear across this country. But right here and right now, it's time to let freedom roar. Let's light them up.
We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, pushing our goals skyward using our station in space.
Endeavour lifted the nation's spirits with a spectacular launch at the twilight's last gleaming. After 2 more flights, Endeavour entered an extended downtime for planned maintenance and upgrades, including the new glass cockpit and a global positioning system for landing.
I think the missions you remember the most are the missions that were the toughest to get there, but we met our goals on the way. We powered up in time after coming out of a major power down period and the major upgrades with the glass cockpit.
The newly upgraded orbiter returned to service in August 2007 on the STS-118 mission. Morgan flew as a mission specialist and recalls watching an orbital sunrise.
So I looked back up at the horizon again, and there was a crescent moon. And it literally seemed, even though it's not this easy to do, but it literally seemed all we had to do was yank on the tiller, take a right turn, and sail straight to the moon. And that's when I really understood how natural and how right space exploration, human space exploration is. And Endeavour played a big part of that.
STS-134 will be Endeavour's 12th flight to the International Space Station. One of the most memorable deliveries was its most recent, the cupola with 7 windows, offering astronauts a room with a captivating view of their home world. After 30 years, the shuttle program is coming to a close.
When you look up and you see that vehicle take off the launch pad, it's just such a sense of pride, and you feel the shock waves hitting you in the chest, and it just vibrates you. It just brings a tear to your eye that we're a part of that program. And then to see Endeavour go up, the last
having an alternative to Soyuz, but then he said he was confused about NASA's plans for Gateway. Could you just fill us in on where the negotiations stand about us flying on Soyuz and Russians flying on commercial crew? And is that at all tied in with the discussions on Gateway, or are they on parallel paths? Or are you trying to get a whole big package of future U.S.-Russian space cooperation? Could you just expand on that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about the commercial crew program, remember, the goal here is to have the International Space Station. Half of it is Russian, the other half is American. And of course, on the American segment, we've got a lot of international partners. And when we think about the International Space Station, if we are going to maintain a complement of both Russian and American astronauts on board, then we need to be willing to launch Russian cosmonauts on commercial crew, and they need to be willing to launch American astronauts on the Soyuz. And my last conversations with Dmitry Rogozin, I think we were both in strong agreement that that was necessary for both nations as we move forward. And so that's kind of the low Earth orbit, International Space Station, commercial crew, and the Soyuz program. I think we're in agreement in how we need to go forward there. Now, it is true that when we talk about the gateway, that's a separate kind of level of discussion for what the future looks like. And yes, we have made proposals to Russia as far as we've asked them, how would they like to participate in the gateway? We've offered suggestions, and right now we're in a holding pattern, waiting to hear back. But the partnership has been strong. This partnership goes back to 1975, the year of my birth. With the Apollo-Soyuz program, and then of course the Shuttle Mir program, and now of course the International Space Station program. This has been, I think, a bright, shiny object that demonstrates that space can unite people, and it's really above terrestrial geopolitics, literally above terrestrial geopolitics. So I think it's a relationship that we are interested in maintaining, and of course we'll continue to work with them. Bob, did you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think, it's something that we need to work on as we continue down the road. We do have a strong partnership, and it's necessary to have multiple vehicles to get us to the International Space Station. We need that dissimilar redundancy, not just between Boeing and SpaceX, but with our Russian partners as well. We proved it during the shuttle era, and I'm sure in the future we'll prove it again.
Yep.
Our next question comes from Robert Perlman from Collect Space.
Behind you, the worm has made a return on this flight and has become more and more prevalent. I wonder if you could talk about how that came to be. Was it SpaceX's request? Was it your idea? And what will be the role of the logo type going forward beyond this mission?
I missed it.
I think we missed the beginning of your question. I think it's about the NASA worm, but can you repeat the question, please?
Sure, if you can hear me now. It is indeed about the worm, the NASA logo type. How did it come to be that it was resurrected for this mission? Was it SpaceX's idea? Was it your idea? Or how did that come to be? And what is its role with the agency going forward beyond this mission?
That's a good question. I'd love to say it was my idea. I will tell you, as the NASA administrator, I've heard from a lot of people that you ought to bring back the worm. I've heard it over and over again. Look, again, I'm the first NASA administrator in history that wasn't alive when we had people walking on the surface of the moon. Not in 1969 and not in 1972. So my generation grew up with the worm. When I say the worm, for the people out there that might not be familiar, it's the NASA logo that's red, and it's written out. And then the logo that's blue, we call that the meatball. But look, I grew up with the worm as the logo of NASA. It's kind of personal to me just because that's how I grew up. I will tell you that the meatball, the blue logo, the circle blue logo, that's a logo that's very near and dear to a lot of other people, the people of the Apollo generation, for example. The NASA style guide is very clear. The worm no longer exists, but I write the style guide. So I made a determination that for this particular mission, on this particular day, we were going to bring back the worm. And we did. This launch, and the reason I thought it was important to do it on this launch, because it got so much attention. And I wanted all of America to know that this is a $3.5 billion investment by the American taxpayer. And this is an American launch. And yes, it's commercial crew. But this is NASA. It's a little bit nostalgic for me. I grew up, I'm a Navy pilot by trade. I grew up with my favorite airplane being the X-29. And it's a forward swept wing aircraft that looks really awesome, if I may say so myself. I had a big poster of it on my wall, and on the side of it was the NASA worm. So I'll be honest, I love the worm. We brought it back. But it's also important to note, on this rocket, we have both. We're bringing people together on this mission. We've got the meatball and we've got the worm. And I like both, so we're going with both.
And
yes, sir, I've noticed the difference with the worm being out there and the meatball. You see a ton of kids these days walking around, right? NASA T-shirts, the worm on their jacket and everything. I think it's just really helped to energize some of the younger generation folks that haven't seen launches maybe in their entire life, or maybe they were very young when that happened. And so you get a lot more questions when we get the opportunity to go out to schools to speak with children. And it's different, I think, than maybe when we were growing up. At least when I remember growing up thinking, oh, an astronaut, that's some far-fetched idea. Somebody does that. I don't know who they are, though, or something you see in the movies, but that's not going to be our future. Our future with the commercialization of space is that it's going to be very accessible to many young people, whether it be as an astronaut or a scientist or as an artist or as an engineer that's working on this program. And so I think the younger generation are starting to realize that and understand it's not the movies, it's not sci-fi, it's reality.
Jim, I got to tell you, I'm kind of glad the worm is making a comeback. In the 70s, it was that futuristic look. It was, it was the future. And my first NASA flight jacket, I still got it at home, and I got a worm on my shoulder and a meatball on the front. So okay. I think they're both awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
So when Doug and Bob launch tomorrow, and you watch that rocket ascend, look for the worm.
It'll be there.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Going to our next question as we try to get in as many people possible. We're trying to wrap it up. Lauren Grush.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. So about the toilet, no, I'm kidding. I was actually curious if you guys could walk us through what the scrub scenario looks like after the astronauts get on board. When do they get off? What do you have to do to make sure that they're safe? And then where do they go? What does that reset look like?
And I'm having a hard time hearing that. What was that?
Were you saying scrub, Lauren? I'm just trying to make sure we understand your question.
Yeah. So if you scrub and the astronauts are already on board, what does that procedure look like? How do they come off? What do you have to do to make sure that they're safe?
Of course, it really depends on at what point the scrub occurs, but they'll have the crew access arm will come back to the vehicle, and essentially we're going to make sure that that the vehicle is safe to approach. We'll have the folks from SpaceX will come in, unbuckle Bob and Doug, and then just escort them out down to the ground, and they'll prepare to give the next launch opportunity a shot. But it's all, of course, done in a manner that makes sure that everybody that's involved is safe.
Great. Our next question is Leo Enright from Irish TV.
A very unlikely scenario of a transatlantic abort. As I understand it, there are not one but two abort modes, which would involve splashing down in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Ireland. And so I'm wondering, what is the plan there? There don't appear to be assets stationed, say, at Shannon. How are the crew going to be retrieved in this very unlikely scenario? Or will you be waiting for a boat from Fenit in Kerry to come and collect them?
Shall I let you?
You bet, absolutely. Yeah. So there are a number of abort modes. We can, as the vehicle crosses across the Atlantic, we have various sites that we're kind of aiming for, and we'll either abort forward to some of those sites, Ireland is an example, or do a retro abort to come back to these areas. And we have assets, of course, stationed off of the coast, prepared to assist the astronauts. But as we get into these longer transatlantic abort modes, we'll be partnering with our military assets to deploy divers and folks to get into the water to help the astronauts, and then bring helicopters or boats alongside, whatever assets are available in that particular area. But it's our partnership with the military that really helps us, the Air Force specifically, that helps us deal with any of those more downrange aborts.
Thank you. Next question, Marcia Dunn.
Yes, hi. I'm wondering how many astronauts will be on site for launch tomorrow. I can imagine the entire astronaut corps emptying out of Houston. And how will you prevent launch fever from taking over on such a big mission with such high expectations with the President of the United States in attendance? Thank you.
As far as the number of astronauts that are here, we've taken a lot of precaution to limit the number of people coming in general. I don't know what the total number of astronauts that will be here is. Do you guys know offhand?
It's, I think, under 10.
Under 10?
Definitely under 10. It's a small number, yes.
So we won't have a large contingent of astronauts here. What was the second part of the question?
Launch fever.
Oh, launch fever. Absolutely. Look, this is a serious issue, and as a naval aviator, there's what we call get-home-itis. We have to make sure that we give permission for people to say no, and I've been doing that all along. In fact, we've been so diligent about making sure people have the authority to say no. We went ahead and purchased a seat on a Soyuz rocket for October. And we did that intentionally because we want people to feel free to say no and not feel any pressure to go on this launch. I texted Bob and Doug yesterday, and I said to them very clearly, if you want me to stop this thing for any reason, say so. I will stop it in a heartbeat if you want me to. They both came back and they said, we're go for launch. So they're ready to go. But look, part of my job as the NASA administrator is to make sure people understand that their safety is our highest priority and give everybody in the loop permission to say no before we launch. Did Bob or the astronauts, you guys?
Marcia, just to your point, we do have a small number of astronauts out here, obviously, just for the COVID concerns. But we're also able to virtually kind of deploy folks in different areas. So I know there's a lot of the astronaut corps is prepared to support media outlets, social media, things that are online, whether it be live or just virtual. And so I think there's hopefully that there'll be a lot of opportunity for us to reach out to maybe a larger audience than we normally would. Of course, we're not going to have the crowds here at KSC, but it is important that folks know that they can still experience the launch live with all of us just through the communications assets that we have available.
And I'll just throw out, I know the launch team, I know the commercial crew program, I know the folks that are on console, and this is a test flight. And they are going to make sure that it's right before they launch, and they're not concerned about who's here to see it. They're concerned about doing their job and doing it correctly, and they've practiced this, and they'll do the right thing.
Thank you. Our last question will come from Ken Chang from the New York Times.
Hi, thank you very much for taking my question. This is noting President Trump's leadership for getting to this moment, and Gary Wiesman, a former NASA astronaut, pointed out that commercial crew started in 2010 when under President Obama, and of course commercial cargo goes back to George W. Bush. I was wondering if you could just talk about credit for getting to this milestone for your predecessors and for previous presidents.
Absolutely. So this is a program that demonstrates the success when you have continuity of purpose going from one administration to the next. If we go back all the way to commercial crew, that started under President George W. Bush, commercial resupply, and then commercial crew under President Obama. And Charlie Bolden did absolutely magnificent work as the NASA administrator at a time when this particular program, and Bob, you remember this, it didn't have a lot of support in Congress. And Charlie Bolden, who is a NASA astronaut and an American hero, he's an F-18 pilot. I got to put the F-18 pilot plug in there. But Charlie Bolden did just yeoman's work in order to get this program off the ground, to get it going. And here we are all these years later having this success. I will reiterate that the human spaceflight program under President Trump has really blossomed. Our budgets now are as high as they've ever been in nominal dollars. They're the highest ever. In real dollars, they're still very high, not maybe as high as Apollo, but that was a little bit of an anomaly in the history of NASA's budget. but it's also true that it's being backed up. The rhetoric isn't just there; it's being backed up with the budgets, and it's bipartisan. You know, I did an event with Speaker Pelosi out at the Ames Research Center. Goodness, that would have been last August, and it was Women's Equality Day, and I thought it was important, and we reached out to her and asked her if we could do Women's Equality Day. She was going to do it in San Francisco. We asked her to do it at Ames. And in a press conference after the event, we talked about Artemis, the importance of going to the moon with all of America, now going with women, and we did it on Women's Equality Day. And in the press conference afterwards, she said, you know, we're all counting on you to get not just the next man, but the first woman to the moon. And she said, I'm so glad that you called the program Artemis. Look, this space program that we have in this country unites people, period. It always has. We look at the most divisive times in American history. We think about the Vietnam War, the 1960s, not just the war, but the protests. We think about the civil rights abuses and the civil rights protests, the very divisive, challenging times. And here we are all these years later in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, and we have this moment in time where we can unite people again. And that's really what this launch is going to do. It's not just going to unite, you know, Republicans and Democrats. It's going to unite the world. The whole world is going to be watching this particular launch, and all of our international partners are very interested. In fact, they participated in the flight readiness review because their astronauts are one day going to fly on this rocket, and they're already big operators of the International Space Station where this Crew Dragon will dock. So this mission is I think a very uniting mission. Space exploration in general unites Republicans and Democrats. It unites people across geopolitical boundaries. And that's really what's unique about NASA and what's unique about space. But I will not hesitate to tell you that President Trump has been a massive space advocate. He promised to launch American astronauts on American rockets. He promised to create a moon program, and he's done both of those, and he's backed it up with his budget requests, not just with the words.
Okay. Well, with that, we're going to close today's press conference. Thank you so much for joining us. For more information, go to nasa.gov. And for more information of how to enjoy all these events virtually, go to nasa.gov/beourguest. Thank you.
Yeah, so if you could just pinch that and pull it down, like grab it by the last joint and pinch it and pull it down. Yep, that's good.
That feel better? Fat fingers, dude.
Well, you don't want any folds in anything, so I got it one size too small.
I understand that. Yeah.
So, yeah.
You're gonna hold like this. Yeah. I'm gonna show you this and let you do the second one. So I'm gonna hold like this. He's gonna push against me until he gets all the way in. And once he sees his hand, he'll bend his arm perfect, just like that, and you'll bring them together. Okay?
And it just clicks and
that's
clicks.
it. And you pull the dollar back over top. Yeah. And then you get to the table, just tuck it under his right here under the chin.
Ready? A little more.
right. So if you ever feel like you need more, I'll take care of it. I'm gonna double check it. Thank you. All right. Give me a good one. Hold on. All right, good. We'd have all done it. Oh, yeah. Yeah, y'all missed that.
All right, here's the money maker.
Hey, watch that safer.
You want to? I got this one. Hold it. I'm gonna pull it. Down. Grab that. Coming down. Hey, Lauren.
Yeah.
Y'all don't need any of that foam. I got tons of it down there for you. All right. It's kind of significant. It's not insignificant, I should say.
I'm going to let this float.
I'll hand it back to you. Do you see anything on the screen right now, actually?
Nope.
No? Okay, give me 1 second. Let me just bring this back up.
Okay. So,
We're going to have you look straight forward. We're just going to calibrate you.
okay.
Hold.
Trying to throw them off station.
Oh, yeah, no, so our
Next up, we'll go to
Hi, thank you for taking my question. First of all, I know you have a manual flying demonstration during your transit to the space station. Can you talk about which of you is actually going to be flying the vehicle and your roles during the flight up to ISS for each of you? And also, you were both selected as astronauts in 2000, sort of in the heart of the shuttle program. Did you ever expect to be flying anything in space besides the shuttle when you joined the astronaut office? Thanks.
For the manual flying, I'll be doing the manual flying as the Dragon Commander, and we will do a manual flying demo in free flight, and then we'll do another one when we get closer to the ISS. And you know, it's certainly those tests are kind of two-person tests for sure, because there's a lot of back and forth between Bob and I, and you know, we practiced it quite a bit, and it's obviously something that we want to make sure we understand completely for future crews in case they ever have to fly the vehicle manually. As far as the second question,
you know, I think both of us would really have been just over the moon if we had the opportunity when we first arrived to fly on a new spacecraft. And over the years, you know, we've seen NASA complete the space station and then consider what the next steps were going to be. And so we've longed to be a part of a test mission, a test space flight, and Doug and I are lucky enough to get that opportunity going forward. So I would say it's something we maybe dreamed about when we were new ASCANs, flying something other than the space shuttle, the next vehicle. It did not seem likely at the time when when we arrived in the astronaut office, there was a lot of assembly of the International Space Station that had to happen. And so we needed to get through that. And we were just excited to have our opportunities on those missions. And that happened many years ago. So I think we're living the dream is what I guess astronaut Michael Fossum would have said if he was posed with that question.
Okay, next we're going to go to Dave Mosher with Business Insider.
Thank you guys for doing this, and best of luck on your flight. So you both said this is an experimental flight and basically an astronaut's dream to do a test flight, but there's still a good amount of risk in it. And I'm curious if and how mission management has shared LOC or LOM numbers with you, and what you think about those numbers, how confident you are moving forward with the test flight. Thank you.
I think whenever we hear those numbers, we dig a little bit deeper than just what the overall statistics might imply. And those numbers are best used as you kind of compare different ways of doing things or hardware changes that you might pursue or otherwise. We've had full information, I think, from the Commercial Crew Program, from the SpaceX team as we've gone forward with this. And so I think we've had the luxury.
So we won't have a large contingent of astronauts here.
Check. We'll put it section 4 and work. SpaceX Dragon in 4.5. We've got 2 good leak checks.
Copy. We confirmed 2 good leak checks. The closeout team will be performing final closeout steps and exiting the capsule. Report when ready to close the hatch.
We are ready at this time to close the hatch when they are.
Copy. We'll keep you posted on progress. Dragon, SpaceX, hatch closure expected within 5 minutes, and you should be getting some cooler air at that point.
We copy. Thanks for the update.
Dragon, SpaceX, we are commencing health check for the launch escape system. Expect momentary flight computer state change, followed by transition back to pad hatch closed.
Copy that, Jay.
Dragon SpaceX for post-ingress brief and a check on how that suit air feels about now.
Go ahead, we're ready.
Copy. Well, today we are not tracking any issues on Dragon and F9 currently. For a weather update, the weather line that is overhead, which is what you saw when you were ingressing, is now moving offshore. The next radar return is a cell over Orlando, which is expected to be our decision gate for today, and that is currently eroding.
That's good news. Thank you.
Copy. And then one additional item, the Cabo, the orbit site, remains as briefed, so no change there. But I do want to make you aware that that is slightly west of Cabo for GO weather. So you just want to target the longitude if needed.
Okay, Dragon copy, slightly west. We'll target the longitude, and the suit air has cooled off, so we appreciate that as well.
Copy, outstanding. Let us know if you have any questions, and we'll keep you posted as the closeout team completes the leak check.
Dragon copy.
Dragon SpaceX for comm checks with Falcon 9.
Go ahead.
Okay, we are ready for that at that time, if you are ready.
We are ready.
All stations up on Countdown Net for section 54.49, F9 responsible engineer, communication check with the crew. Start with guidance, navigation, and control.
Dragon GNC on Countdown 1, comm check.
GNC Dragon, loud and clear.
GNC loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the propulsion engineer.
Dragon, prop on Countdown 1, comm check.
Prop Dragon, loud and clear.
Prop, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check with the avionics engineer.
Dragon, avionics on Countdown 1, comm check.
Avionics Dragon, we have good loud and clear.
Avionics loud and clear. Stand by for comm check with the ground segment engineer.
Dragon, ground segment on Countdown 1, comm check.
Ground segment Dragon, loud and clear.
Ground segment loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by launch control.
Dragon, launch control on Countdown 1, comm check.
Launch control Dragon, loud and clear.
Launch control loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the chief engineer.
Dragon, chief engineer on Countdown 1, comm check.
Bala, Dragon has you loud and clear.
Chief engineer, loud and clear. This completes the F9 responsible engineer comm checks. Dragon, chief engineer on Dragon to ground.
Go ahead, sir.
I was just doing a comm check on this loop. Good luck, guys, and buckle in.
Thanks to you and the F9 team, Bala. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bala.
Dragon, SpaceX, we can confirm a good side hatch leak check.
Dragon copies, good leak check.